A pleasant good morning to everyone, and welcome once again to another edition of the Carlos Brown Show, heard exclusively right here on the Open Mic Broadcast Network and Spreaker.com every Saturday mornings from 10 a.m. to 12 noon Central Standard Time. Today's guest menu looks like this. He is the former athletic director at Southern University, former athletic director at Morgan State University, now retired and living in Baton Rouge. Floyd Kerr. He'll join me at about 10:15. We'll have an interesting discussion with Floyd Kerr. I always like to get his perspective on NCAA issues and, of course, what's going on in the sports world today. It's always good to get his perspective on current events as well. Then Coach Pettaway will join us in hour number one this week. He'll join me. Got to run some things by him. One being the situation as far as coaching in the Southwestern Athletic Conference. One hire, well, actually two hires by an institution in the conference, and then one institution gives a nice extension to a basketball coach. We'll talk more about that. And then following Coach Pettaway will be, of course, Charles Edmond of the Alcorn State Radio Network. Now, next week I'll have an attorney on to kind of discuss from a liability perspective on this whole pandemic situation, coronavirus, its effect, a possible effect. And I just think some of these questions and conversations, they need to be had. It needs to be honest with you. There is still a lot going on. It's going to come down to, are they going to have sports, collegiate, from a professional standpoint? And are you comfortable, you meaning fans, alums, and what have you? Would you be comfortable going to a sporting event? And will there even be fans at sporting events? This is a new normal for a while now. So you have to either adjust or else. But that's the guest menu on today's show. Here's what's trending right now. Nate Kilber, named head women's basketball coach at Alcorn State. He is a coach that has a lot of familiarity with the conference. And of course, being at UAPB, coaching at Alcorn State before this will be his second stint, and also at Mississippi Valley State. So, Coach Kilbert named the new head women's basketball coach at Alcorn State. Alabama A&M Margaret Richards has received a 4-year extension coming off a very outstanding performance with the Lady Bulldogs basketball team, and she was rewarded. So a 4-year extension. Also, Kevin Larry, the new women's soccer coach at Alcorn State. So Alcorn State has now filled in their openings. And then ex-Cleveland Cavalier guard Mo Williams reportedly is in the running for the Alabama State men's basketball coaching position. So that will be interesting. As assistant coach at Cal State Northridge in California. So that's what's trending on today's show, the Carlos Brown Show. You can get involved. You can send me an email, and boy, I got a couple of good emails. They're so long, strategically long, that it provides a lot of information. But you can send an email to the Carlos Brown Show at gmail.com. I have Carlos Brown Show Facebook page messenger open. You can send me a message via that way as well. So, Floyd Kerr, Coach Pettaway, Charles Edmond joining me on today's show. Let me say hello and good morning to Dr. Brother Michael Prince, Sir, good morning to you.
Good morning, my brother. How are you today, man?
I am doing fine. Hey, you wake up in the morning, you go to bed, you wake up, and if you wake up, that's a blessing.
Amen to that, brother.
Because tomorrow's not promised.
Absolutely.
Tomorrow's not promised. And by the way, right before the show, little Richard passes away at 87.
Okay.
87 years old.
Woo!
Yeah, well, I mean, a nice long life,
Yes.
very interesting life. But the point is, we're losing people, every day, some every other day, every week.
Mm-hmm.
So to be among the living, albeit with this pandemic going on, hey, thank God there still is a God.
Amen to that. Remind me of the old song, Woke Up This Morning with My Mind Stayed on Jesus.
I heard that.
You know anything about that, man?
I know a little bit of something.
Just a little bit
that.
about it? Okay. We ain't going to start singing it, though, but...
No, I'm just a nobody trying to tell everybody
about somebody.
Oh,
boy, you better stop.
To save everybody.
You better stop. We might have to take an offering plate around here after a while, man.
Well, with that being said, the pandemic, Floyd Kerr would join me, and we're going to have a discussion about some things equivalent to the pandemic, and from a institutional perspective, and him being Floyd Kerr, being a director of athletic director for so long, it's good to just kind of pick his brain and get his perspective on some things. I'm not going to say put his AD hat on, but he's retired now.
Do you ever take it off?
I think once a director of athletics, always. It's just like a coach.
There you go. You don't ever take that hat off, man. No.
And so with that being said, we had an interesting conversation Friday talking about, him coming on today on the show. And I've already set up for next week. I'll just put it out there. Channing Warner, former Southern University football player, now an attorney in the state of Louisiana. And boy, and I tell you, we talked 2 hours, literally. Of course, football, about the situation that's going on, and I'm just going to leave it at that point.
Here's my question: You all didn't rehash the Alcorn game, did you?
No, not the 2019 championship, but he did relate to me when he played. Southern was successful. And I have to be very careful because, don't get me wrong, as I've said before, when you're runner up, you second place, that's good. But at what point you're just gonna push on through, and that will just make it so much better. But that game specifically didn't come up. But he talked about his time at Southern University and the success they had, and this interesting conversation.
Oh, I understand. I know it's been real achy breaky heart for you, man, and you keep being a glutton for punishment, going back and watch that thing, and like the results are not going to change. You know that, right?
That is true. That is absolutely true. And I have been taking some punishment with that. But I can safely say now I'm not going to watch it anymore.
So you're saying you've been healed and delivered?
Put it this way. I don't know if I'm totally healed. It's like I think I'm okay with it, but you can't have flashbacks and setbacks.
I do understand, brother.
I think I'm okay, and then somebody may mention 400 yards. There I'm gone.
Now you got
yards
me thinking
rushing.
about another old 100. Go down Moses and tell old Pharaoh to let my people go.
Yeah, well, and the funny thing is, Moses didn't make it over.
No, because Moses let his temperament get over, and
And
he's.
speaking of temperament, hey, that's why I have to let it go.
You got to, man. Don't
I
go
have to
toward the
let it
light.
go.
Don't go toward the light, Carlos.
But but you know what? I do appreciate the Alcorn alums and fans that listen.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we have fun about it. But you know, at the end of the day, some of them know how I feel, and you know what? I can appreciate that.
Right.
Because as one of them told me, if this situation was reversed, they would be feeling the same way.
You know what? If I may inject, I just want to compliment the listeners to this show, to the other shows that we produce here, and to the network as a whole. We got some outstanding, intelligent, loyal, faithful listeners and supporters. And it wouldn't have it any other way, man. It is absolutely amazing how the people are on top of their A game. They add dialogue. I know they keep my stuff going. I know they keep your stuff going. They keep everybody else involved stuff going. And I just want to tell them thank you at this time, if you don't mind me saying that, brother.
I concur. I was looking at my downloads, probably past 10,000. Sometime this week. At least after this show. So you thank everybody, from you on down.
Yeah, it's just something. And when you was talking about your trending deal about Mo Williams and letting it be known, you also know the word is he said he would do it for free.
Yeah, somebody need to talk to him. Wait a minute. What? I've seen people come in and put a proposal together and say, I will take over this program at your institution for X amount of dollars. And it was a low bid, if you get my drift. They had other people they had lined up that they were going to talk to. Guess what? When you came in with that figure, it put you straight to the top.
Right.
And so, but that's interesting. I didn't know that. And actually, I came across this information early this morning. So
about the Mo Williams deal?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And according to some other sources, he thought he was going to land somewhere else in the conference.
Would that be JSU, the I love, the one you love
Well,
to hate?
I'll put it this way. He is a Jackson native, right?
Right.
Native of Jackson, Mississippi, and things didn't work. That's interesting. Because if you think about it, someone else thought he was going to be in Jackson.
Oh, you're talking about the guy at Mississippi Valley. Another NBA former player.
So
I believe his last name is Hunter.
Yeah. But JSU men's basketball coach, he's Lazarus. People had him buried for dead several times. And wake up, Lazarus.
Man, you are feeling spiritual today, aren't you?
Oh my goodness! I don't know.
Wow.
I don't know about that.
Ain't nothing wrong with it now. I'm all for that now.
Well, Coach Brett, I tell you what, the last few seasons it's been rocky. Good points. Remember this past year, man, on a losing streak, 4 or 5 game losing streak, then 6 or 7 game winning streak, then kind of faded toward the end, but he's still there, and we'll see what happens with that situation.
I can't wait till Coach Pettaway get on, because with all the stuff that's going on, and even with Gilbert coming back, man, Pettaway going to be on fire today. You know that, don't you?
Well,
And
yeah,
you better, and I'm going to tell you
I
something.
understand that.
You've been cutting up after the fact. I go ahead and tell you. I'm telling on you right now. See, folks, in between breaks, I be telling Coach Pettaway he been good today. Then he starts cutting up after I give you a good report. So I'm going to stop giving you premature good reports, man.
Yeah, because you know how that goes. I'm going to be throwing rocks. but actually, when that news came down, and we'll see what, of course, Charles has to say about it. Charles Edmond. I heard for some alpha nights, and they have the critical eye out on this situation. Now, I think the majority of people are going to say it was a good hire. I know. Charles texted me and said it was a good hire. He's safe hire. I've heard that from other people. But it's interesting.
It is.
It is interesting with that hire to me. I guess I thought they were going to go, out maybe outside the conference. But that shows you what I know.
Well, I think it's speaking of the time that we're at right now when you're dealing with the pandemic, finances are going to be somewhat restricted. And so you got to go with a familiar foe, if you allow me to put it that way. And some people that I've run across, they say, could it be reaching to the well once too many?
A legitimate question, I would think. Also, I've had people that say sometimes they would go the route of maybe a very hungry Division II coach that has done well on that level and is really looking to prove itself once again. That is an option, a direction you could go. But at the end of the day, it's going to be the director of athletics at Alcorn.
And that would be Dr. Derek Horn.
Yeah, it's going to all fall back on his hires. If it plays out, you're fine. If it doesn't, well, the arrows will point back at him as well.
And he's a basketball guy. So he wants his basketball hires to be extremely successful.
Yeah, well, I can tell you this. Before this show is over with, I know I'm going to hear from some members of the Brave Nation. And I wonder how they feel. Sometimes you can feel good on the surface, on the outside, but internally, you may be thinking something else. But congratulations to Coach Kilbert. Yes, he's familiar with the program, and he should hit the ground running. Albeit, there is a question, though, at UAPB. I don't know if it was something internal, external, but didn't last too long. Last season. So. But those are legitimate questions. I guess internally they've discussed all of that, I'm sure. So, on that note, I'm going to take a time out. When I come back, I'm going to visit with Floyd Kerr, former director of athletics at Morgan State and Southern University. He joins me next. You're listening to the Carlos Brown Show on the Open Mic Broadcast Network and Spreaker.com.
As a dad, you'll probably spend years teaching your son how to hit a baseball, how to throw a tight spiral and hit a receiver, how to spring off a diving board and hit the water, how to hit a 1-wood and a 9-iron, how to hit the bullseye, how to hit the strike zone, hit a jump shot, hit the open man, hit the hockey net, and maybe the most challenging of all, how to hit the books. But the question is this: how much time will you spend teaching him what not to hit? Teach your son early and often that all violence against women is wrong. For tips on what to say, visit endabuse.org. Brought to you by the Family Violence Prevention Fund, the Waite Institute for Violence Prevention, the Ad Council, and this station.
One voice. It can get the point across, but it only carries so far. Add a voice. It's richer, louder, but that has limits too. Add a third voice. It's even more powerful. Add another, and many, many more, and we are stronger than ever. That's the power of a community coalition. They help community groups, faith groups, civic organizations, PTAs, employers, and many others in your community organize their resources and focus them where they're needed most, like fighting to keep kids away from drugs. Ask a group that you belong to if they should belong to a community coalition. It's easy to get involved. Visit helpyourcommunity.org and they'll tell you exactly how your group can help. That's helpyourcommunity.org, because you get more when we get together. Brought to you by the Office of National Drug Control Policy and the Ad Council.
Drivers and bicyclists both have the right to be on the road and travel safely. And when we're on the road together, safety is a shared responsibility. State law requires drivers to maintain at least 3 feet of clearance when passing bicyclists. And bicyclists should always ride with the direction of traffic and follow all traffic signals. It's safer. It's courteous. It's the law. A message from the Regional Planning Commission Pedestrian and Bicycle Program.
Welcome back to this week's edition of the Carlos Brown Show, heard exclusively right here on the Open Mic Broadcast Network and Spreaker.com. First guest of today's show is a friend, former director of athletics at Southern University and Morgan State, now retired but doing well. Once a director of athletics, always one. I'm going to visit now with Floyd Kerr. Floyd, good morning to you, sir. How are you and the family doing?
Doing well. Thanks for asking, Carlos. It's great to be back with you and hear your voice. But we're doing well. I hope that you're doing the same.
Oh, yeah. Everyone is bunkering down and only go out if you have to, basically. But, boy, what a time, this pandemic. Never seen anything like it in my lifetime. Floyd.
Yeah, this is incredible. As a matter of fact, I was just reading, a friend of mine just sent me a little clipping on Nostradamus, of all people, the guy that predicted it. And you'd be amazed at how accurate his prediction is about this pandemic that's there now. And with the words he used, how accurate it is, and the time. And he calls it the twin century, 2020. It's incredible, man.
Well, it has affected everything in life, from economics, health, of course, and the way of the world that we have known is now altered. And athletics going to be the same thing. Higher education. The same thing. It's going to be an effect on it. Just want to get right into it, Floyd, from your expertise. Institutional liability issues. Should higher education, should athletics, should everyone be concerned with those liability issues from this pandemic?
Oh, I think so. That's a great question, and I think it's a question that's paramount on colleges' campuses, and talk to my colleagues around the country. But the answer to that is in more than one form, because as you know, the more well-resourced institutions, they're going to have greater resources to deal with that. And of course, the lesser resourced institutions will have more challenges dealing with that. But I think there's a serious role that the colleges and universities have to look at and plan for dealing with the liability of it. Because if kids come back to school, you have them come back to school. Is there liability if they get sick? They're living on campus and they get sick. Is that legitimate? Or that sort of thing as an example.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because I'm kind of talking to an attorney yesterday, and he gave the pros and cons. Well, someone will say that they got sick from a sporting event, or did you get sick on campus? Did it happen you're in the dorm room visiting with a friend? So from a legal standpoint, it's going to be really, in the liability perspective, it's going to be very interesting to see how they work this out. Floyd, could we say it's, because it's unprecedented, it's a lot of still unknowns about what's going to happen as far as a plan?
I think it is at this point, at this stage of the game. But in talking to one of my close friends associated with Syracuse University, they're looking at how do we define liability? This pandemic and the being affected with this virus, as you just said, is multidimensional. I mean, you really don't know where you get it from or how you got it. You just know that something caused you to have it transferred to you, since it's from human to human. But they're in the process of defining what their liabilities are, and then what their responsibilities are within considering those issues. Particularly for athletics, it's a little easier for athletics, but for the general population of the university. And now that's a high-end resource institution there, so you can see that it's very important. And hopefully soon we'll start to hear of these plans on how athletic departments are going to enter the next school year, with a plan to deal with this. Right.
And now, Floyd, I said I wasn't going to, before you came on, put you with the AD hat on, but if you were at an institution, and you just mentioned about, the higher resource schools having, the financial wherewithal to handle this better, what about the other institutions, like a Southern, like a McNeese State? How do you kind of start developing a plan for some unknown, some answers that you don't have right now?
Right. Well, before using an example of a highly resourced institution, and then and now talking about a lesser resourced institution as an example. One of the things as an athletic director, I would re-examine and make sure that all pieces are in place to deal with this would be to look at the insurance policies of the school. I was in the state of Maryland. The state of Maryland is self-insured. So there's no calling an insurance company and having an insurance policy. I believe most states are considered self-insured. So from an athletic standpoint and from a employment or a personnel standpoint, the people on campus at the institutions, they're covered through the state. I know as an athletic director, we would not be as concerned about our student athletes in terms of health liabilities because of the self insurance through the state of Maryland. I don't know exactly how it works here in the state of Louisiana, but in terms of employees, of course, you have paid benefits by the institution, so everyone would be covered from a health liability standpoint.
Interesting. Very interesting. Visiting with Floyd Kerr, former director of athletics at Southern University and Morgan State University. discussing institutional liability issues should there be concerns. So there should be. And now moving on, Floyd, to the likelihood of no fans attending games on campuses. I know they're still trying to figure a lot of things out, but does Floyd Kerr believe that maybe that will be the middle ground where they'll reach, where you'll have some sporting events, but there'll be no fans? Because Floyd, I'm already hearing people saying, well, I understand this is going on, but I can't afford not to have, say, football on this level, which drives everything in sports.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is, and this is what my mind would be saying to me is, you got to think about and consider the balance between, because we're talking about revenue. Okay, the bottom line is revenue streams, and in all of my conversations, that's where the conversation ends up. Because how do we support our program, and by relying on revenue or income, and then not having fans? For a Morgan State or McNeese State, I would venture to say that would be a critical decision on how many people we allow in the stands, or if we can manage that, do we have a plan to do that? And that'd be a serious consideration. Basketball would be a little different. Track would be different because it's outside. Your spring sports are outside, and I think they're easier to manage if you have a fan base and fan accommodations. Let me put it that way, because it's outside. But those are inside, and those where large crowds gather, I think is going to be very important to have a very effective plan moving forward. Now, in terms of having no fans, again, that's back to the first question. The higher resourced institutions, such as the LSU, that has a huge business aspect to their program, could weather the financial storm much better than a lesser resourced institution, but still would have a significant impact to their revenue streams in terms of ticket sales and fan accommodation. But all of the other things that go into financing athletics, such as your TV contracts, your marketing, etc., could weather that storm on the same model that the professional sports are. You know, they're going to play without fans, but they have such huge TV contracts and marketing deals that their revenue streams, can help weather the storm. But now, from a concession standpoint, that would be something that would really affect lower resourced institutions. No fans without a TV contract or TV revenue, it means that you're going to be limited in your revenue streams. So I think you're right. That's going to be a real tough one to deal with, and how they come up with a plan and how the institution can help them bridge that, or whether they're going to get state help for the entire institution, which a piece will be broken off for athletics. Because remember now, institutions have to have a balanced budget at the end of the fiscal year.
Interesting.
Heavily endowed institutions, Carlos, I don't think they'll have a problem. Those that are lesser endowed may not have the cash reserve to tap into for the long term. Because we're looking at long term, really not short term.
I'm going to come back to that. This is with Floyd Kerr, former director of athletics at Morgan State and Southern University. Floyd, a listener asked me to ask you a question.
Okay.
Carlos, can you have people sign a waiver to absolve the university of liability? And I did talk to an attorney about that very thing, but Floyd, if you want to tackle that one.
Well, I think that's a twofold question. And my opinion on it is we're talking about public institutions. We're talking about institutions of higher education. And I mean, it's not like a private industry business. It's not like a restaurant or well, let's take the meatpacking industry, which is very highly controversial now.
Oh, yeah.
And because of the demand in that industry to serve the public and to serve the customer base, you can see where the pressure to make frontline employees come back to work, or in the hospital industry, where our frontline workers have to be there. Because that's different than at the higher education institution. That's different because distance, working from a distance in higher ed is more solvable than you can't do that social distancing with frontline employees at a hospital or at a meatpacking plant. They have to be there to get the work done.
Mm-hmm.
So now, in terms of suing your employer if you come to the job and get sick, I'm still not. I'm still not on one side of the fence or the other, because I think it depends on which industry you're talking about. Should an employee have the ability to sue their employer? They have that right now. Should there be a waiver from that? My opinion is, if the federal government grants a waiver to an employer for that, then my opinion is the federal government should be supporting that type of a situation, to support the employer and to mitigate for the employee. Because I don't think you can support one side of that argument without doing something to support the other side of that argument. But I think you just brought up a very serious situation for the United States. Because you know how easy it is to sue in the United States. It's a part of our system. But at this point, I don't think anybody's going to move on that. Personally, I don't think anybody's going to move on that.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see. It doesn't matter if I'm in a red state or a blue state.
No, the virus has no color.
I understand.
It has no color.
I understand. Visiting with Floyd Kerr, former director of athletics at Southern University and Morgan State University. So we've kind of talked about the institutional liability issues. Should there be some concerns? The likelihood of no fans attending games on campus. Now, and we don't know yet, but I'm sure we will shortly, eventually, if they decide to have sporting events, then institutions will have to be able to pay for testing of students and student athletes. How will that affect institutions financially, in your opinion, Floyd?
Well, at this point, now again, getting back to having an effective and good plan, but I think institutions will be impacted greatly in terms of athletics. Now, let's say that they don't have athletics and they shut down the athletic department, or they or they limit it. Let's say they constrict it down to a few sports. For instance, if you have 14 sports or 16, and you only think that you can afford to deal with this with 8 sports, and you decide which sports you're not going to participate in, or you're not going to participate at all, then I think that transitions everybody over to university policy, because student athletes are students. And what the university policy is on that side will cover the students. And of course, your coaches and your employees and personnel on that side, would cover it. Currently, I spoke with one of my colleagues at University of St. Louis. We had a nice visit a couple of days ago, and they're working from home, and they have certain tools that they use to communicate so that they can manage these situations in the context that we're talking about. If there are some teams that can't play, some that does play. Well, there are tools out there electronically, such as Zoom, Team, a Microsoft program, of course, Skype, to just mention a few, and social media that can help bridge that gap. But then, as you're asking, what happens if we can't afford to have the athletics program and have games and shut down for a year? And I think there's tremendous impact to that. I mean, I think that would cut very deeply into the survivability of many, many institutions, whether they're high resourced or not, because of our society and the demand for sports in our society. We're a sports-driven society here, and I mean,
well, Floyd, let me ask this. Well, so it comes down to safety, and then you have I use profits, but an athletic department, if they are not able to have the sports, say this season, some universities will just won't make it? They'll fold?
Personally, I don't think so. What I think is going to happen is all institutions will figure out a way to have their athletics program, and then figure out a way to support that financially, because in athletics, as you already generally know, is safety and having a safe environment to compete and to grow in athletics has always been one of the top priorities of athletics. So that commitment would not change. The safety of the students and the student athletes on campus are one of the number one priorities of an institution. And I think institutions are smart enough to figure that part out. But now, can they sustain an athletic program without injuring the economic situation or level of the institution? Now, I think that's a critical problem, issue that institutions are going to have to deal with very seriously. Because now we're talking about what kind of resources can you put in place to sustain your program over this long period. Now, if this thing was going to end on a definite date, let's say September 1st, the Lord says, okay, Earth, you're done. The coronavirus ends. That would be a better way. You could do that. But we know a reality. This thing may go on for 2 more years. We don't know when it's going to end.
Right.
Even with a vaccine, we still don't know when it's going to end.
Right. And then Floyd too, scholarships still have to be honored.
Yes.
And of course that costs. So I guess I'm trying to see the other side. Well, some are saying safety is an issue. That's the number one issue. That's the number one priority. But we kind of caught between a rock and a hard place, because from an athletic standpoint, a financial standpoint, and I've talked to several athletic directors over the past few weeks, they have a business model for not having some sports, not having sports at all for an academic year, which would be, I know, devastating. and then a pared down, a limited sports. So it's a tough situation. You almost caught between a rock and a hard place.
Absolutely, and each I think you hit the nail right on the head, and you mentioned the central focal point in dealing with these issues, and that is, can we keep this? Does our business model fit? And how are we going to get through that? Are we going to have our whole program, part of our program? Are we going to have no fans at our program? Or are we going to constrict or reduce the size of our program so that it can survive and then make a comeback in the end? But regardless of what institutions do and which plan they execute, it will never be the same again. The economic structure in America will never be the same as we know it today. It will never be the same again. Our society will never be the same again. Other societies are already made the change, and they've gone in the direction such as in China, in Italy, in South Korea. They've already made the commitment and made the change because of how they handled this pandemic in the beginning. I mean, they went all out from day one. You know, they restricted active stay-at-home distance, practicing social distance. They did that from day one, and those countries, as opposed to the United States, they took measures from a governmental standpoint and required their citizenship. Germany was another one in that group, and required their citizenship to practice these things, and then did the other elements that they needed to do to make it work, such as testing, universal testing.
In other words, they had a quick response, but before that, they had a plan of action. You didn't hear like some in this country. Oh, it's a hoax. Oh, it's don't believe that. It's a liberal idea. Well, my friends, the virus does not recognize liberals, conservatives, Republicans, et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely. And remember, those other countries are not configured like the United States. We are the United States of America. Italy is Italy. It's its own country. It's like California. And our states are part of the union. So collectively, we're the country. They don't have that problem in Germany. You know, the prime minister of Germany can say, no, everybody in this country is going to do this way. Here, we're getting the dynamics of, well, the federal government would do this, and then the states have to do this. And in listening and watching all of the press conferences that Governor Cuomo up in New York has been hosting, and he's become very popular across the country, is that, well, there are issues between the federal government and their role and the states and their role. Because I look at the states like I look at the institutions. You know, the NCAA, from an athletic standpoint, the NCAA says, okay, we're the governing body for you and operating your program. But it's on you to deal with these issues. And we're not the ones, they, in this scenario, they are the government. And they can say, no, institutions have to do that. But our federal government, I don't believe they can say that. I don't think they can do that.
Well,
because the states have the same legal responsibilities that as the institutions have, and each state has to have a balanced budget. it can't submit a budget deficit to its state. I know you couldn't do that in a state law in Maryland. We could, as an institution, Morgan State and University of Maryland could not submit a deficit. At the end of the year, and the state of Maryland could not submit a deficit at the end of the year to the federal government.
Well,
they're required to have a balanced budget at the end of the year at each stage, and that's kind of how it works in this country. And it's the same with cities as you go, up the food chain.
Well,
so it's very interesting, man. That's why everyone is talking about the new normal.
Yeah. In the front page of the Advocate, they're talking about, budget cuts to higher education because of the pandemic.
Absolutely, and that's
so
another
trickle down is never good. Trickle down economics.
Right. That's right. And as I've often said over the last couple of months, is the famous Reaganism trickle down economics. Never really benefited our level, the lower end of our economic society. It only really benefited the higher end, the top 10%, and the rest of our society suffered for it because it didn't trickle down. But now we're faced with trickle up. Bottom up management, and I view the United States from a political standpoint have enormous problems with that. Particularly those that are in power and those that are at the top that have the resources to deal with this. They can socially isolate themselves, do whatever they want. They have the resources. But those of us who do not have the resources to do that, and the demand is to address the needs of those that are at the bottom of the chain, it's an enormous problem.
It is an enormous problem. Visiting with Floyd Kerr, former director of athletics at Southern University and Morgan State. Got 8 minutes till the top of the hour, and Floyd, as I always appreciate the time and the perspective. After it's all said and done, what will be, in your opinion, some permanent changes in higher education and athletic departments because of COVID-19? If you could look into a crystal ball, maybe.
Yeah. Well, we've already mentioned some of the permanent changes that are going to take place in the liability issue, the fans issue, and even for paying for tests, and all the things that must take place from a business sense at the academy. But in athletics, seeing the future in athletics across the country, no matter what level you're at, the NCAA has taken the lead in it, and institutions are coming up with plans, and the NCAA has already started making permanent change in how athletics will be executed and managed and administrated throughout the NCAA member schools. They've already changed rules, and several rules have already changed. The first one was granting a waiver for those seniors who couldn't go to their conference tournaments this year to get their senior year back.
Right.
So they have another year of eligibility. I mean, that's a serious change, and as you know, a freshman class is coming in, so people got to be able to manage that.
And
what about
Floyd?
Yeah.
And Floyd, they also left, correct me if I'm wrong, left it up to the institutions to settle that. In other words, finance it.
Absolutely, and that's a burden on institutions. And take into consideration the next, I think, is a really huge move that's going to change the entire structure of institutions. And you're right, the NCAA is saying we didn't have our tournament, so we don't have the resources to support you this time around. So you're going to have to you're going to have to support this financially because there's going to be limited revenue coming back from us to you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a given. We know that. But the NCAA is also allowing student athletes to use their likeness to market and brand themselves at their own expense, so that they can build their portfolio, you might say, so that they can have a better present themselves better and generate a more platform for them to have popularity and notoriety and build a brand for themselves. That's a huge change. And the other one is initial eligibility, lowering the GPA to 2.3 and waiving the SAT and ACT for kids to come into the institution at a lower level to counter the effects of this crisis. And I'm sure that they're going to end up passing those pieces of legislation as well as others to make it easier on institutions to deal with student athletes. And that's a counter to the pressure that the professional sports are putting on. And we know that's more at the Power 5 level than at the mid-major and the low major level. But that's a part of the counter to that pressure, because the pressure from the pros is we want elite athletes to get to us as soon as possible.
Well,
should a football player, go to the NFL after 1 year in college, stuff like that.
Right. Well, Floyd, I know you saw Coach Harbaugh at Michigan, his letter to the football community, basically saying, that a player, in other words, the same position as basketball. After the freshman season, they can, apply for the professional league. But now I think, if I'm not mistaken, if you don't sign with an agent, then you don't lose your collegiate eligibility. Correct?
Correct. Yeah, and
that's a whole other topic. I know for football, but that's kind of what he introduced to the football community. Maybe they'll take that up.
Counter, and the counter that the NCAA is looking at, if something like that took legs and became a part of college football, basketball is already engaged in that with the one and done, and now stay 2 years. And then the counter the NBA just came out with is this pass-through team, selecting 12 of the top basketball players that can go to the G League, earn $500,000, and prepare themselves for the NBA draft the following year. That's supposed to kick in, which will further weaken college basketball.
Yeah.
Hey, Carlos, it's conceivable that Zion Williamson, if that was there, may not have gone to college.
And you, as you just said, you may see more of the G League kids coming up right out of high school, boom, right into that.
Right into that, because if you commit to that and go right in, you can earn $100,000 if you make the team right off the bat. But this new pass-through team that will be a part of the G League out there and make $500,000, now that's a different conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely right.
It impacts college sports. The impact there in college sports. Baseball has figured this thing out from a professional level. That's going to trickle down to the colleges. They're going to figure it out for baseball, but that's an outdoor sport. And I always differentiate between the outdoor sports and the indoor sports.
Amateurism.
Right. And
will be redefined.
And the large crowd sports and the limited crowd sports. And then you go to Division II and you go to Division III and you repeat the same conversation.
Well, Floyd, my head is hurting.
Hey, it's a lot. It's a lot to deal with. But
Yeah,
Carlos, I would say to anyone that's listening that this is one of the constructs and one of the conversations we've always and will continue to have in athletics is the one thing that is constant is change.
Change.
Yes, and I'm a believer that people that are involved in sports, directly or indirectly, are people who handle change on a constant basis.
And if you don't handle it effectively, Floyd,
it's like an old football player once told me, "Hey, you either adjust or die." Well, literally here, I mean, I probably shouldn't use that word now because we're in a crisis that is causing death. But you either adjust or lose the game. So you have to change.
100.
That's the big part of sports. Yeah.
Well, we're gonna have to invite you back. It's still a lot to digest and conversation. As I stated, my head's hurting, but not in a bad way, in a good way. I know this conversation will continue after this show, but it's always good to get the perspective of someone who has been in the wars, who has paid his time in college athletics, and we'll remember that change in athletics, this society right now, and those who can adapt to it, they're going to be okay.
Yes. Absolutely.
Floyd, you and the family, stay safe, bunker down, and enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we will have a follow-up. We'll get you back real soon. It's always something to talk about when you're dealing with NCAA issues.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me on, and to all the mothers out there, have a great Mother's Day, and Carlos, is always a pleasure. Anytime.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. That was Floyd Kerr, former director of athletics at Oregon State University, Southern University, and it's always a pleasure to have Floyd on. I remember when Floyd Kerr was picked to be the director of athletics at Southern University. Didn't know him at all. Looked at his background, was very impressed, the resume. But then getting to know the person, tremendous person, down to earth, very smart. And I'll never forget in the day in radio when Southern University said, hey, and this guy was in the top, 150 people in athletics in the nation, Sports Illustrated, and they didn't renew his contract. You talking about just lost it. I almost lost my radio job that day. I was so disappointed. But, you have to make adjustments. So Floyd was able to move past it, what happened, but a lot of people feel they're very fond of Floyd, and they still are. He will never be forgotten in the Southern University athletic department history, at least according to the fans and the alums. On that note, take a quick time out. When I come back, I'll visit with Coach Pettaway and talk with him about several topics, and then we'll follow up with Charles Edmond of the Alcorn State Radio Network. Keep it locked right here. I'll be right back.
I present to you 3 of the fiercest subjects ever assembled in the cage of doom. First, the brain-wrenching behemoth, Algebra 2, weighing in at a mind-boggling 800 pounds. Foreign languages! The multilingual international sensation capable of tossing you clear across the Atlantic. And finally, biology. More ferocious than formaldehyde, she'll dissect you one chromosome at a time. Who among you will step up to their challenge?
Yeah, I'll do it. Me too. I'm in. Sign me up.
Take on the tough classes now. You need them to prepare for college. Find out which classes you need at knowhowtogo.org.
Brought to you by the American Council on Education, Lumina Foundation for Education, and the Ad Council.
Be the one with courage to fight child abuse.
All Texans must find the courage to fight child abuse.
Learn the signs and symptoms and report suspected abuse to appropriate authorities.
Learn and know these warning signs.
A child who undergoes changes in behavior, appetite, or routine.
Watch for unexplained injuries, a change in academic performance, or loss of interest by a child in regular activities.
Trust your instincts. If you suspect something, do something.
If you believe a child is in an abusive situation, please call the Texas Abuse Hotline at 1-800-252-5400.
Be the one with courage. To find your local Children's Advocacy Center, visit onewithcourage.org.
On behalf of children, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, this is Lonzo Hardy Jr., President of the SWAC Alumni Association. The SWAC Alumni Association is an organization founded on December 10, 1999 at the Sheraton Hotel in Birmingham, Alabama. Its mission is to serve as a rallying ground for individuals who have made the Southwestern Athletic Conference the illustrious conference that it is today. Its membership is open to former student athletes who have played in the conference in any sport, as well as to coaches, athletic administrators, staff members, game officials, and fans. Annually, the association holds a Legends Awards and Roast Banquet or Luncheon, where it honors individuals with Lifetime Achievement Awards, a Chuck Crossett Wagon Master Award, and occasionally a Distinguished Service Award. Proceeds from that event help to finance degree completion scholarships for student athletes who have exhausted their playing eligibility at SWAC universities but who may still need an extra semester or two to complete their college studies. For more information on the SWAC Alumni Association or to get information on becoming a member, you can send correspondence to SWAC Alumni Association, 875 Miller Creek Lane, Newport News, Virginia, 23602. The email address is SWACalumniassociation@yahoo.com.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of the Carlos Brown Show, heard exclusively right here on the Open Mic Broadcast Network and Spreaker.com. I want to thank Floyd Kerr, former Director of Athletics at Southern University and Morgan State, for joining me on today's show. And he also didn't get a chance to, but acknowledged the passing of Marino Cassim, former Director of Athletics at Alcorn State and Southern University, and former iconic football coach a year at Alabama State, Alcorn State, and at Southern University. So he did call us back and wanted me to mention that, give his condolences to the Cassim family. Now, with that being said, another famous coach, Coach Van Pettaway joins me, the Carlos Brown Show's basketball analyst. Coach Pettaway, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing fine. How you guys doing today?
I'm doing all right. I guess I've been behaving so far on today's show, but it still got time left.
Yep.
in our number 2. But Coach Pettaway, you still being safe and the family's okay?
Well, I do have to let you guys know something that I have been keeping a secret. I had to quarantine for 2 weeks, and not because I had the virus, but my father ended up testing positive for the virus. And I had taken my father to the doctor and to the hospital. And when he tested positive, they did tell me that I needed to quarantine in place. My quarantine ended this past Tuesday. And in fact, I'm back on the road now because my father's doing so well. He'll be 84 on the 17th of this month. And he has jumped on that thing and stepped on his neck, and he's progressing well. So that's part of the reason why I'm on the road again today. So I just thought I would let you all know that, because, you know, we talk about this thing every week, and then I was sitting there like, you know what, that's people know anyway. So let me let the fellows know what's going on in my life. But I'm grateful to be here, and we've been having a great time, and this virus is real. I mean, we see it in athletics. And then yesterday, I think did you all hear the president of the NC2A say that he's not sure what's going to happen, but he does know this: there will not be any sports if the schools, if there's not an all clear for the schools to be open, that there will not be any sports. And that came from the president of the NC2A yesterday. So this thing is far from being over, especially when it comes to collegiate athletics. And you know, they're looking at all different kinds of scenarios, but until they come up with a cure, I think, fellas, we've already said it. This is just going to be a different year for us, and I don't think it's just going to be this year. This is going to have an effect, I think, 2 or 3 years down the road, because when you talk about the smaller schools, if they have to miss an athletic year, that's going to set their programs back. And a lot of them are not going to be able to pull out of that hole right away. So it's going to have a lasting effect. Just how long, nobody knows at this particular time.
Right. Well said. A lot of unknowns. We just had Ford Curl on, and basically wrapping up his ending. Those who can change and adapt, they're going to be all right.
Yep.
It's always changing in athletics as we know it. But now with this unprecedented situation with this pandemic and this virus,
right? But if anybody, Carlos, if anybody's going to come through this, our coaches will, because we as coaches, by nature, we have to be able to adapt and accept change on the fly. If you coach the game of basketball and football, you got to be ready to change in an instant. So I think that if any segment of society will be able to make the adjustment and move on, I think it'll be the coaches. I honestly think it'll be the coaches.
Oh yeah, toughness, being able to change, making adjustments, and not just waiting to halftime. Sometimes,
correct, right.
Yeah. Now, if you make adjustments after the game, and you see your mistakes, well, sometimes that can get you in the crossroads. But, you get my drift.
Yep. That'll put you in them crosshairs when you wait after the game. You make your adjustments made after the game. You better be able to make those decisions during the course of that game, and that's why I think, because we're programmed to do that already. That's why I think the adjustments will be made by the coaches in their respective sports to get their teams jump started when the all clear is given.
Amen. So great news about you. Great news about your father. And I appreciate you sharing that. You didn't have to.
Right.
You did. I'm telling you, we appreciate it here at the Coles Brown Show. Speaking of change and being able to adapt, a couple of things to throw at you. And one being Nate Kilbert, head women's basketball coach at Alcorn State. Now,
that's a great hire. Great hire.
I'll put you down for great.
Yep.
Most of the people that I've talked to, which there hasn't been a lot of Alcorn, some of them not too happy, but social media, as far as the alumni, it seems like they're happy with the decision. Why does Coach Pettaway say this is a great hire?
Because I know Nate Kilbert, the person. You know, even though he was on the women's side, I had an opportunity to be around him, during my time in the SWAC. He and his wife, and they're, there's some great people, great individuals, and he's a hard worker. A lot of times, the men coaches, they don't have anything to do with the women, but I was different. I wanted to know everybody, and I got a chance to know Nate and Coach Kilbert, and that's why I think it's a great hire, because number one, he's a hard worker. He recruits well, and I think he'll be able to give that message to those players, to those young ladies, and I think Alcorn did a good job. They did their research. They know this guy's been around the SWAC. I think this is maybe his third stop in the SWAC, so he knows the SWAC. And so that, to me, that gives him an advantage. And then with him going back to the state of Mississippi, he already had his contacts there from when he was at Valley and all this kind of thing. So I think it's a great hire.
If Alcorn Knight is listening right now, I know you said it's a great hire. How would you convince them, besides what you just said? Is there something else that maybe they don't know or we don't know that specifically puts him as an outstanding hire?
Well, I think he has shown that he can get it done. He's been at some places that have had very limited budgets when it comes to women's basketball, and he made an impression. He did good things at those places. So Alcorn is going to have more resources to work with than some of the other places he coached at previously, and because of what he does on the floor, I think they'll be able to see a difference.
Sometimes you could be in the right place, Coach, at the right time.
Yep.
And sometimes you could be the right person, but at the wrong place.
Correct.
At the wrong time.
That's true.
Well, Nate Kilbert, named head women's basketball coach at Alcorn State, familiar territory. Now, I know you're just going to be smiling ear to ear, smiling when you heard this. Alabama A&M, Margaret Richards, Coach Richards, has received a 4-year extension, warranted. I put my stamp of approval on this one. Can you believe that, Coach?
And so do I, because I watched Margaret. I watched her, from her first game to the last game of this regular season. She's a tremendous basketball coach. She's very knowledgeable. She has an outstanding staff. I really like the staff that she's assembled, and she gets it done. She works hard. She doesn't cut corners. They go out and get the work done. With her assistants, Red and Naira, they get after it, and that's what you got to have in basketball. So I think the administration at A&M saw the progress that she made in the program, and I think they did the right thing by showing her that they got the confidence in her by giving her 4 more years. I think that was pretty nice, and that's what a lot of these coaches deserve at some of these programs. When a coach does well, I think you should reward them with an extension, particularly at the HBCUs, because we don't have a lot of longevity. We're not making a whole lot of money at these institutions. So let them feel proud about themselves and let their families feel proud for them by giving them an extension.
Coach, do you know what the original contract was? How many years?
I think her original contract was a 3-year. Three was either 3 or 4. I can't remember now.
Yeah, because I know certain schools they do that. Because we've had discussions about this on the past, and I think I've been in the minority in that discussion. I think more people disagree with me, and I don't know if it's a wrong or right situation. I just from example at Southern University, usually when they hire a new coach, you don't get 4 or 5 years in the beginning.
Well, that's not. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, and what I was saying was at Southern that they don't do that, but then you'll get it on the back end. Case in point, Kerry Jackson, the baseball coach. I was shocked when he originally had a 2-year contract, right? But then he got an extension, I think 3, and now it's a 5. And my colleagues, they barbecued me about how the situation at Southern, how they were doing that, because in most places, most people will say they should get a 4 or 5 year contract up front. And I'm thinking that's what you're going to say, correct?
Yes, it is. I would not take a job without a 4-year contract.
I'll take a whipping from you, Coach.
No. I'm serious. You don't. You're not giving your coach a lot of confidence when you only you're not giving him a 4-year contract. You need a recruiting class, so you need those freshmen to become seniors. Now, if we're not showing progress, then we screwed up. This is not the right hire. But in 3 years, now I'm gonna leave a bunch of juniors and they're gonna win the championship in the 4th year. See, that's not fair. I should be able to coach those kids in their senior year. So and me personally, I would not accept a job that does not give me a 4-year contract out the gate.
Well, Coach, I did say I was in the minority of thinking on this. Yep. But briefly, let me explain again. I'm not saying it was right. I'm just telling you what was the reality. Now, if you ask me, Carlos, if you're an AD, or Carlos, do you think a coach should get 4 or 5 years when he signed a contract up front? Then I'll give you an answer. Then you can say, well, no, I disagree with that. I could go with a 4-year contract. Right. I can go with a 3-year contract. Nope. You're not going to win with my seniors. I wouldn't accept that. I'm going to bring in a class of freshmen, and then I'm going at the end of the junior year. You get them in their senior year. That's a championship ball club. Okay. How about if, you wouldn't do it, but say a 3-year contract, and year 1 you get second place, year 2 you win it, and then I come back and offer you, say, a 3 or 4 year extension or 3-year extension. Do you think most coaches would go for that? Well, yeah. I mean, if they need a job, yes, they're gonna go for it. But I'm saying, is that fair to that coach and their family? Right. I'm saying. See, I would not move my family for 3 years. If you only making a commitment to me for 3 years, I can't do that. I wouldn't do that to my family. Right. Yeah. Go ahead.
Coach, I hear you talking. Is that the young Coach Pettaway or the old Coach Pettaway talking? If you're first time
that's the young Coach Pettaway. I never accepted anything less than that.
You say that's the younger. Well, but the reason I'm saying, because it seems like the trend now is to give unproven coaches, to give them a shot, but to give them a 3-year offer, and then with the potential of extensions. Now, it's also been said that part of the money challenges, and this is more or less to the Power 5 schools, these buyouts are going to change. It's no longer going to be a bunch of $1 million buyouts. Do you have buyout clauses included in these, or do you just take it as a year-by-year extension of the contract?
Let me just tell you this. In most HBCUs, there is no buyout. We're not jumping ship because we're not making that kind of money. We're not making the money that the Power 5s are making. Right. I never had a buyout. I could have left at any time for another job.
But even with our buyouts on our level, we can't even afford the buyouts if it's $100,000, $200,000.
Right. That's why in HBCUs they don't want to give a 4 and 5 year contract, because if things are going bad, they can't afford to buy that coach out the rest of his contract. You're right. They can't pay him and a new coach at the same time.
Right.
But that's why it's so stressful. That's why it's so stressful in the HBCUs with these coaches, because they have families that they got to provide for, and you got these institutions that don't want to give them job security, and that's just not right. We don't. It didn't just start now. We just don't take care of our own. Historically, we don't take care of our own people.
Do you think it's by design or by budget?
I think it's because of the budget. It's because of the budget. Because I think if we had more money, you would see the bigger contract. You would see the longer contract. But because we're penny pinching, that's why they get these 3-year deals. But I like I said, me personally, I'm not going anywhere without a 4-year deal. Now, a young coach, a new coach, let's say a coach with no family, that's a great deal for him. You go take the 3 years. You've never been a head coach. You take that 3-year contract, and you got to work your tail off so that you can get an extension.
Wow!
Because now a lot of guys we don't get recycled now. If you look at it, a lot of the HBCU coaches, they don't get recycled. Not like the other guys do now. You know, they got a brotherhood. Okay. Yeah, they'll bring somebody on as an assistant coach and keep him going in the business until he can get another job. That's the way they do it. We don't do that. That's just like I keep hearing the rumors about Alabama State and Mo Williams.
I was going to bring that up, but go right ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Carlos.
No. Go ahead.
I've been here. I heard one of their alumnus called me yesterday and wanted to know, did I hear anything about Alabama State and them hiring Mo Williams? I said, I don't know if they've hired him, but I said, I know he's a candidate, and he's a candidate because he's from the state. He played his collegiate basketball at the University of Alabama. He played in the NBA. So from a recruiting standpoint, if he was to go in there, I think he'll be able to attract some talent because, you know, he can sell the guys on. He knows the road to the NBA because he's been there, done that. All right. Another thing that'll help Alabama State. This guy is not going to go in there and try to break the bank. He's made his money. He's made his money in the NBA. And I even heard one rumor that he was going to lowball just to get the job because he wants to be a head coach. He can afford to do that.
About that.
Right. Now, see, he can afford to do that because I think he's only been an assistant coach on the collegiate level. And I don't think he was assistant coach at a Power 5 school.
No. What's that, Cal State, Northridge?
Okay, right. That's not Power 5. So see, him wanting to get a young coach or a coach who's like him, who's been in the NBA and he's already made his money, he can afford to do that. He can take that 3-year contract at Alabama State if that's what they offer.
Interesting. Point blank question, Coach Pettaway. Because they know basketball. I know they have basketball knowledge. Does being in the NBA, would that have him, or would it make him be automatically a winning coach at Alabama State?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
All right. In the NBA, you had the word that Coach Pettaway for a minute. You know, now this is all in love if we disagree.
Yes. No, I'm serious. Just because you play doesn't mean that's going to translate into wins. No, there's no way. And history's already proven that. Magic Johnson, one of the greatest basketball basketball players ever. Terrible coach.
Do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
He said he couldn't do it.
Right.
Putting up with the attitude. It's the way, if I remember correctly, putting up with the mindset of the players during that time, and it's different when he played. But Larry Bird did it, had more success.
Right.
The Pacers.
But see, a lot of coaches, like some of the NBA coaches now that are successful, you all would be surprised to know that a couple of those guys that never even played basketball. So they just know the game. They know the game. And on the collegiate level, a guy coming from the NBA, the first thing is you got to learn that rule book. The NCAA rule book is so big, you'll be committing violations you don't even know it, because there's so many doggone rules and changes. They change every year. So being abreast of the rules and regulations of the NCAA, that's going to be key. Now I would know if Mo was to take a job like that, he probably would make sure that he brought in veteran assistants. If he's smart, he would do that. You bring in people that's already been in the game, because see, I don't even know how long he's been coaching on the collegiate level. But being the first time as a head coach, you got to have that help. You got to have that experience. But if Alabama State pull the trigger on it, I think he'll help them in the recruiting game. But as far as X's and O's, I don't know. He was a great player now. I remember when he played at Alabama.
Yeah, and I disliked him when he went to the professional the Cavaliers, but you understand, because he was
right
in the Eastern Conference. Nobody messes with my Miami Heat.
Right. So
I'll be on the couch for that one too. Boy, I'm going to have a psychiatric help. Yeah, well, we'll never know about well, maybe I shouldn't say that. The NBA was talking about maybe looking at something.
Well, I think the NBA is going to end up messing up the collegiate game, because, with the G League and the way they're doing things now, they're plucking some of the best collegiate player guys who would be going to college. Mm-hmm. They're now playing the G League because they're making the money bigger.
Yeah.
They got that $100,000 thing out there, and then from what I understand, they're going to raise that. So that's going to be promising to some of those kids. They're going to look at that, getting a jump start on life by going on to the G League, getting that experience, and getting a pretty decent paycheck until they can get a bigger paycheck by being drafted.
And you can always, with online courses, you can always chip away if you care to do so.
Yeah, but I'm like Coach Job on this. You go to college so that you can get a good job in life, right? That's part of the reason you going to college, attending college. Mm-hmm. Get you a degree so that you will be able to have earning power. Well, if you can go to the NBA, that's earning power. You already got to earn. You can always go back and get a degree if that's what you want.
Yeah,
but you can be like Floyd Mayweather. You can hire people to do the reading and stuff for you.
Wow, the iconic money man there.
Yep.
Well, and finally, boy, this has been interesting. Coach Pettaway, you're on fire today.
Oh man,
last chance segment. It's still. I've been watching it. Everybody's been watching it, and it's amazing during this pandemic that now that this is the talk of the sporting world as far as all the national shows. They sit, they dissect every little bit. Now, this is not new, with the Bulls and Michael Jordan and Isaiah Thomas. Every week it is something else. This past weekend, what kind of brought it back to life for you as far as the Last Dance with the Bulls? And
well, see, none of that surprised me this past week, because the things that they were talking about and they were going over, we already knew that. I think what is happening, some people are seeing another side of Michael that he did not want public. Mm-hmm. That they really finding out what his killer instinct, how it came about, and how vicious he was with some of his teammates. But those of us that are in basketball, we already knew some of these things.
Yeah,
so it's not surprising to us. And look, most great players, they are going to push their teammates, and they can't push it all. They're not going to push the same button for different each person. That's just like a coach. I can't coach my center like I coach my point guard. Different personalities. So the way his way of motivating them, it was different from player to player.
Yeah, that's interesting, Coach, because we all knew that back in the day, Magic Johnson, quote unquote, ran off a coach.
Right.
the non-Nixon situation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's always been interesting. And when you look at some of the personalities, what I wanted to say was, it just came to me. Did you see where Mr. Sharp on his show, when the situation with Horace Grant, they don't feed him because he played poorly, and Sharp said, "Look, I got to keep this clean. We'd have been fighting. He was whooped my butt, I whipped his. One or two of the actions would have happened, but you're not going to disrespect me in that way." I think you always have situations where teams, they have these moments where they get into it. Some we know about, some we don't know about.
Right. And look, I'll bring it to the collegiate level. I knew coaches that if their team didn't perform well, not only did they if they ate, it wasn't what they wanted.
Got peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Thank you.
What? I just plucked that one out of the air, but
right. That's what I'm saying. Now that has happened on the collegiate level. I know college coaches that will change that menu because of the way the kids played. Yep. So that's
incentive or punishment.
Right.
Wow.
Yep. And see that's why, the NC2A had to put rules in. That's just like back in the day when now this back in the early 80s, your team performs terrible. You at home. You wait 30 to 45 minutes after the game.
Mm-hmm.
You go right back on the court and practice.
Mm-hmm.
In uniform, in the same uniform you just played poorly in. Now you're gonna practice in it. So the NC2A said, no, that's a form of punishment. We're gonna stop this. That's not gonna happen anymore. So there are a lot of ways to try to motivate players. Michael did it his way. They're gonna find out if they ever do one on Kobe. Kobe's gonna have some similar situations in his past.
Oh my! I mean, people have told me about. And I think Shaquille even talked about it. When Kobe's a rookie, and well, in his early career, we'll put it this way.
Right.
They had a fist fight.
Correct.
In practice, because to me, Kobe is cut out of the same cloth.
Right.
As Manga, as far as that assassin mentality, and
Kobe, Kobe blamed Shaq for him not winning more titles because he said Shaq was not committed to the game, because if he was committed to the game, he would have paid the price and kept his body in shape.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep. Kobe put that out there. That was part of their dust up. He didn't feel like Shaq applied himself for the game of basketball, and they could have been more successful had he been in better shape. That was his opinion now.
Yeah, a lot more titles.
Yep.
A lot more titles. Well, Coach, as always, it has been very interesting, to say the least. And how do you say it? Even if we disagree, it's out of love.
Oh yes. Always.
And so I know I'll have some comments about me and my 3-year contract given out, but for the record again, that's the situation Southern is doing. And I had a former board member told me the days of a 5-year contract at Southern University, when you hire a coach, they're over.
Wow.
And so far to what he said, that has been true. But now, will that always stay the same?
Wow, I think that depends on the administration. But I think they'll lose some. I think they'll lose some good coaches that way. Because
I want to say Coach Wood's got a 3-year contract, but he's more established.
Mm-hmm.
But Coach Jackson had a 2-year, but now he's got a nice extension. So
right.
Well, Southern's in the minority, I guess, on that one.
Yep.
But I could bring up one other thing, but I'll wait till next week. But you remember Coach Rob Spivey, huh?
Yeah, I know Coach Spivey.
Oh, I knew that. That's why.
Some great rivalries at Alabama State and Southern. Yeah, I used to love to see Rob coming.
we're gonna discuss we're gonna discuss why I feel the way I do because of when it came to Southern. You know, you can have a great year. You can have, and then get rewarded with a rollover your contract.
Yep.
And then if it doesn't work out, somebody's stuck.
Yep.
And now you'll have a chance to convince me next week how I think me thinking that way is not necessarily a great way to think, but that's kind of what spoiled me on. I used to take the opposite view. Oh no, need a 5-year contract right off the bat, and I still know I recognize I'm in the minority with that, but there have been some bad situations.
Yep.
I'd rather give you your money and your bonus than to roll that contract over. And then if something happens, I'm stuck. But chalk it up to a life lesson, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Stay safe. Coach
All right.
Petaway.
Thank you, fellas. Same to you all. Everybody be safe and be blessed. And we'll talk again next week.
Yes, we will.
All right. Bye-bye.
That was Coach Petaway, Coach Van Petaway, the Carlos Brown Show's basketball analyst. I think I need a break now. Let me get Charles in here quickly. I had to move him back. But we'll give the remaining time to Charles Edmond of the Alcorn State Radio Network. Get his thoughts on a couple of hires at Alcorn State. And we'll find something else to talk about as well. You're listening to the Carlos Brown Show on the Open Mic Broadcast Network and Spreaker.com.
Chris, can you put the video game controller down for a second?
I can talk and play. Oh, I'm totally annihilating this punk kid in Nebraska.
I just feel like you're not acting like a grown-up in our relationship.
Him too.
Well, you still ride your skateboard to work. There's the comic book collection, the race car bed.
Look, I'm young at heart, but I put money into my 401k every paycheck. I picked up a few savings tips at feedthepig.org. I have control of my financial life now, and that feels pretty grown up.
Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. Putting some money from every paycheck into a savings account or contributing to your 401k can make a big difference later. For free ideas and easy tips on ways to save, go to feedthepig.org. That's feedthepig.org.
So, I bet I look like a grown-up to you now.
Well, except for the footy pajamas, I'd have to agree.
This message brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
Ladies and gentlemen, in the next 7 years of bigger and bigger enrollments, America's grade schools will need nearly 250,000 extra teachers besides those to fill normal vacancies. This great need, plus the growing public interest in education and improvements in schools, make elementary school teaching a more rewarding career than ever, a career that high school and college students should certainly consider. Education holds America's future, perhaps your future.
The birth of legends are storied in this conference. We must never forget our rich history. We now turn our gaze to the future. The new legends will emerge. New heroes to arise. The Southwestern Athletic Conference. Be our history.
Welcome back to this final segment of the Carlos Brown Show, heard exclusively right here on the Open Mic Broadcast Network and Spreaker.com. Final guest of today's show, Charles Edmond of the Alcorn State Radio Network. Charles, good morning to you. Are you being safe and practicing safe habits?
Yes, I am. I'm being safe. I'm wearing a mask. Been forced to in some cases. Just try to do the social distancing, washing hands. I've washed my hands more in the last 2 months than I have in the last 20 years. And I think a lot of us are probably in agreement with that statement. But doing the best that we can for as long as we can do this.
Yeah, I'm looking at my hands now. But, all this washing, I need a good 30-minute rub down with lotion on the hands.
I would agree with that, too.
Yeah, you can dry it up. Matter of fact, all over would be outstanding. But anyway. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, if you're not getting as much sunlight, I was a golden brown, almost a caramel color. Now I guess I'm back to my original light color. I guess. But anyway, that sunshine is important. Charles, we've had some hires at Alcorn State University. They have filled in all of their opening coaching positions, or open coaching positions. Nate Kilbert, I saw where you had a text message saying a good hire and a safe hire. Could you explain that?
Yeah, I think because of the fact that he's been a part of the program before and an assistant, longtime assistant under Shirley Walker, where they won championships. He understands the SWAC landscape. I think he understands talent. And he was not only able to do that as an assistant at Alcorn, he's been coach of the year at Valley and UAPB. So I think he's familiar, obviously, with the alumni base, and what the Brave Nation likes. He's a really, really good guy, a really nice guy, very friendly, very personable. And I think it fits. So I think Derek Horn is kind of going back to, a person that's been a part of this program when it was at the top of the SWAC women's basketball game. And I think for Coach Kilburn, and he had been out of the game for a period of time. He was let go at UAPB, and I know his wife well, and I was talking with her after he was let go at UAPB, and she said it was kind of a blessing in disguise because he had really been kind of burned out a little bit. And I think by being on the sidelines for a period of time, he's able to rejuvenate, refresh, re-energize, and he looks really good. And I did a pretty long interview with him the other day. He's ready to go. I think he knows what it takes. I think he knows what it looks like in terms of trying to win at a high level in this league. And, of course, Jackson State's the standard right now. I think he can do it, and it's just a matter of getting his boots on the ground, on campus, and getting to work.
Well, if you look at it, Jackson State, they would be, I guess, number one in a preseason ranking. Don't want to have one of those too early lists that you see with football.
Way too early.
Yeah. Texas Southern going to still be there. Prairie View is improving with Coach Pugh there. Southern. He's coming into, and then Coach Richards, Coach Margaret Richards, Alabama A&M, a 4-year extension. I approve that extension. I'm going to have to text Mr. Hicks and say, there you go, buddy. Good extension. That was a little humor there, Charles. A little joke. Maybe a good one, but you know what I mean. But but Coach, I don't want Coach Pettaway to get me. He might still be listening. But when you look at it, that's going to be some tough competition, and he'll be able to jump right in there with his experience in the conference. My outstanding coaches on that side, on the women's side, in the Southwest Athletic Conference.
It used to be years ago, it used to be Southern, it used to be Texas Southern, and there used to be 2 or 3 teams that you can pretty much bank on being at the top of the league. Prairie View, you had Cynthia Cooper doing it at Prairie View and Texas Southern. Now she's back again. Southern with Coach Funches. That program is really getting the talent, especially in the state of Mississippi, where Coach Funches is familiar with. So clearly, and you talked about Coach Richards at A&M. I think that's a good extension. Coach Byron Hicks doesn't do that very often, and for him to give an extension like that, he obviously is pleased with what Coach Richards is doing, and a new arena's coming there. So I think he feels good about all that. So I think if you look at the women's side, it could be wide open. Jackson State, they're going to lose a little bit. They got some height that they had last year. They'll be losing some pieces, and we'll see how the recruiting piece looks. But Coach Kilbert walking into a good situation at Alcorn where the fans like him, the former players, the BBGs as we call them, basketball girls that played when he was an assistant, they love him. So I think clearly, bringing the excitement back to the Whitney Arena on the women's side is something that he's talked about, and I think over a period of time he'll be able to do that.
Visiting with Charles Edmond of the Alcorn State Radio Network, discussing Nate Kilbert, named head women's basketball coach at Alcorn State. While you were talking, I know Jackson State, got another transfer in, a 6'4" young lady, and Prairie View's got some height coming in. Oh, do they? Southern still has some height. Did Coach Gilbert talk about in your interview about what type of players that he would like to get as far as, does he emphasize post play? Will the program or team be guard oriented? What will his style of play? Did he talk about any of that, what he would like to implement?
Yeah, he did. And he did emphasize the post. And if you look at his coaching resume, whether at Valley or whether at Pine Bluff, he was able to get some pretty decent low post players, 6'2", 6'3", in there at Valley and Pine Bluff. And he believes he can do the same at Alcorn. And that's where it's going to start. The Lady Braves over the years have been able to get the scoring, the shooting, whether it's Rasco or others. They've been able to get the players to put the ball in the bucket. But one of the things that they've struggled with is getting low post action. So that's one of his first points of emphasis is getting a low post game. He wants to go high-low. And I just think in terms of tempo, he just wants to go the style of the game. I think whether he can push it, whether he can go half court. Last year we were one of the top teams nationally in creating turnovers. I think he'll still try to do some of that, but I think he's looking at more of a low post presence, more of a point guard that's going to lead the team and direct the team in terms of what they need to do offensively. So those are the two things. But the number one point, as you mentioned, and I did ask him about that, low post, getting some post players in there is going to be the number one commodity that he'll be looking for.
Yeah, because on the women's side in this conference, there's some tremendous post players, and you're starting to see height. Again, reference back to Jackson State, Prairie View. I was looking at their list, and they're bringing in some height.
Alabama A&M with Doriana Lewis.
Yeah, and so it's interesting to see how he gets in there and jumps right into it and gets into a competitive women's side. It'll be interesting if everything works out. Hopefully, basketball will maybe start on time. We'll see. With the pandemic going on, it's a lot of unknowns. And then Kevin Larry, the new women's soccer coach, Vicksburg native at Alcorn, to complete Alcorn State's hiring as far as the open positions. A little bit about him, Charles.
Yeah, I did a pretty good interview with him. He's really excited. He was a volunteer coach at Alcorn back in 2012, and he's bounced around North Carolina A&T, and recently he was an assistant at Jackson State last year, where that team that he was an assistant on had 6 straight shutouts. And in soccer, that's very hard to do. So I think he brings a hard-nosed mentality in. He's really excited about the opportunity. Of course, he's from Vicksburg. He's bounced around. He's played soccer since he was 10 years old. And him and I share some stories. Soccer was one of my loves as a kid growing up. I grew up with, I enjoyed the game of soccer. I played a little bit of it on a recreational level on a very limited basis. I was a goalie, of course, being the tallest thing out there. I used to like what one of the more popular sports at the time was the MISL. I think Dr. Prince probably would know this, being a native St. Louis and the major indoor soccer
Steamers.
The St. Louis Steamers.
There you go.
And I used to go to their games. And Carl, you talk about rivalries. The St. Louis Steamers they were a big rival with a team. I think it was the New York. I can't remember the name of the team. It was a New York whatever. But they had a player, probably one of the best soccer players in the world. His name was Steve Junkel. And you talk about going to the old Checker Dome, the old arena. They had 18,000 in there. That just shows you how popular soccer was. Soccer is the most popular sport in the world.
Yeah,
a lot of people
football
might not know that. Yep, football, the football. And he kind of got on my case when I said football. I said, what are you talking about? The real football is what I'm coaching. Talk about soccer.
I've had that discussion with coworkers.
Yeah.
They say American football versus the real football. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He had checked me on that at the end there. So, he's looking forward to the opportunity to coming in and really improving the soccer program. We've had our struggles. There's no question about it over the years. We had a lot of injuries. That's been a big issue over the years as well. But I like the hire, and with him being from the area, I think he'll be able to take his Jackson State tutelage and bring it to Alcorn, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. You always, want the best, and if you supporting your institutions and your teams, you want the best for them. And now Alcorn State, again, they've done all their hires. Now it's just a matter of seeing what's going to happen as far as sports in the fall. It's kind of still up in the air, but at least you have the pieces in place. And I still get the sense, Charles, and you tell me if I'm off base. People, because sports is so ingrained in this society, I worry about some people if they don't have sports for if there's no sports in the fall as they've known it. I think I know I'll be all right, but boy, some people I worry about. I'm not talking about anybody specifically, but just in general. They love their sports, and it could be altered for a while. At least it won't be it'll be a new normal, with everything in this society. So that's included sports. Sport is not, they have to adapt as well, like everybody else. It's just going to be interesting, and time will tell. But I think, once again, you should put in your mind the possibility of sports being totally altered and not the way you're accustomed to it being.
Well, I think if you look at it right now, I think people are ready to jump off the ledge right now because there's nothing going on really. You saw some Korean baseball action overseas that you saw that on ESPN the other night, and you're seeing some soccer. I think MMA is doing something tonight, I believe.
Yeah, with no fans, I believe.
Yeah, with no fans. A couple of players tested positive. So, there is going to be a new normal. There's no question about it. For me personally, I'm prepared for a late start for football. I don't anticipate this thing starting on time. I don't know, and I think I'll preface that because the one thing I've heard all week from experts, sports commissioners, coaches, nobody really knows how this thing's going to go. So we're just giving our opinion, the unknowns. I just think that the way it's going right now, even though the NFL came out with their schedule the other day with dates, is that they're prepared to start on time, but they also prefaced it by saying it could change, and I think it will. I just don't see this thing cranking up on time. I'm talking about college football, especially if there are no students. You hear ADs, you hear commissioners say they can't imagine playing home games with no fans. That still has to be worked on. So there's still a lot of moving pieces. But in my mind, and I'm prepared for whatever comes down the pipe. I'm prepared for a late start for football. I'm prepared for that, and whatever comes, just understand. I hope folks understand it's not going to be the same, even when we do crank up with sanitation and trying to get the stadiums ready, the campuses ready, whatever it's going to be. It's going to be totally different than what we've had in the past.
Well, on that note, Charles, we'll visit with you next week. Now, I don't think we got a chance to do it, but a listener wants you to put together your Alcorn basketball team. And so that's right. What you can think about. Yeah. So okay. We'll do it for next week. But be safe as always. And appreciate the time and enjoy the rest of your weekend and stay safe.
I will. I'm writing it down now. My little cheat sheet, all corn basketball team. I'll have that assignment ready, Professor Brown, for next week.
All right. I've been called anything, Professor. I've been called a lot on this show, I'm sure. Thanks a lot. On that note, want to thank all of our guests, Floyd Kerr, Coach Pettaway, Charles Edmond, Dr. Michael Prince, and those who have listened and sent in some messages. Keep the discussion going. Appreciate you as always. Until next Saturday at 10 a.m., make sure you tune in for the Carlos Brown Show, heard exclusively right here on the Open Network and Spreaker.com. Until that time, as always, peace and God bless.